Famine has already been declared in South Sudan, and in Nigeria and Somalia, starvation looms closer each day. The United Nations is urging the international community to take strong and urgent action.
Unless we act now, it is only a matter of time until it affects other areas and other countries. We are facing a tragedy. We must avoid it becoming a catastrophe. This is preventable if the international community takes decisive action.
Secretary General Antonio Guterres said Wednesday more than $4 billion is needed by the end of March to help some 20 million people. 7 million are in Nigeria's insurgency-hit northeast and around Lake Chad. And across the Gulf of Aden, Yemen's 2-year conflict has left it facing the largest food emergency in the world, with over 7 million people needing immediate help.
One of the biggest obstacles we face now is funding. Humanitarian operations in these 4 countries require more than $5.6 billion this year. And we need at least $4.4 billion by the end of March to avert a catastrophe. Despite some generous pledges, just $90 million has actually been received so far, around 2 cents for every dollar needed. We are in the beginning of the year, but these numbers are very worrying.
The UN World Food Programme says over 20 million people in these countries are at risk of dying from starvation within 6 months. Already, nearly 500,000 children are suffering from severe acute malnutrition. Clementine, Logan, CGTN.
Well, let's bring you more now on this pressing crisis. I'm joined in studio by Chalice McDonough. She is the spokesperson for the World Food Programme here in Nairobi, Kenya. Chalice, thank you so much for joining us. Now, of course, the UN is seeking a large amount of money, billions of dollars. Their deadline is just the end of next month. Do you feel as though perhaps that the UN systems failed to see this coming?
Well, this is actually, all of these crises are things that we have been warning about for quite some time. In South Sudan, those warnings date back several years. And in Nigeria, Somalia, and Yemen, I think that none of this is new and none of it is necessarily a surprise. The problem is that the number of crises at the same time, these 4 combined with the Syria crisis and Iraq and a whole host of other humanitarian crises in recent years, has really stretched the humanitarian system to its limits. So the needs globally are simply outstripping the resources that are being made available to meet them.
And having said that, then what are the chances that the international community will respond to this call for billions of dollars by the end of next month?
Well, the international community has responded in many of these crises already. In South Sudan, we have been able to mount a massive humanitarian response to keep this famine at bay for 3 years. We've now seen a sharp disintegration in the food security and the levels of hunger in 2 areas of the country, so that we now have a famine declared. But that very easily could have happened earlier without that international response. So if we get that robust international response, and we believe the world recognizes the severity of these crises and the need to respond, then it is possible to keep famine conditions in South Sudan from spreading or getting worse, and to roll those back there. And it is possible with the resources and with the access to keep the other 3 crises from deteriorating into famine. But it takes action right now.
And as you say, there's multiple crises around the world taking place that a lot of international organizations are being called to respond to, governments too. Is there a risk of donor fatigue at some point?
I think it's less a matter of fatigue as just sort of overwhelming of the humanitarian system and the way that the world has set up to meet the resourcing needs, the political needs for engagement on so many different crises at the same time. So I think that the donors have actually been stepping up. More humanitarian assistance is reaching more people than it has ever before. But the needs are so much greater that it's really just sort of overwhelmed the system as it exists now, and we need to take a strong look at that system and figure out how we can sustainably resource these protracted crises so that we can meet the humanitarian needs while engaging with the political questions and the political will that's going to be required to solve the conflicts that are at the root of all of these crises.
And you say that there has been some success when it comes to the famine and keeping it at bay for a number of years now, but of course more action needed at this point. What kind of intervention strategies then will be employed, or do you hope that, say for instance, the World Food Programme will employ in addressing the urgency of the matter?
Well, in South Sudan, we've got 3 teams that are poised to go into Lear County right now this week, we hope, which is one of the areas where famine has been declared. We've been working around the clock to try to gain and maintain access to people who are either in famine or at risk of famine, and there are 1 million people in South Sudan who are on the brink. So we've got helicopters, we've got Aleutian aircraft that are airdropping food into remote areas. We've got teams that are going out into places that can only be reached by air, and these very complex access negotiations that are to try to get us not just one-time access to those areas. The important thing is being able to go back time after time after time so that people can get assistance regularly that allows them to recover. But I think that the most important thing for the people in South Sudan and in Somalia and in Nigeria and in Yemen is that without a sustainable peace and without sort of meaningful security for aid workers and most importantly for the people we're trying to assist, all of this is just a band-aid. So we need that political, we can save lives, but we shouldn't have to keep saving the same lives over and over again. We need meaningful political engagement to bring an end to these conflicts so that this kind of humanitarian response isn't necessary.
Certainly can't have one without the other. Thanks very much, Chalice McDonough, for bringing some perspective to this famine that, of course, is causing a lot of problems in many parts of the world.